Hey there, it's Craig at Unleashed Education here, and today we're going to be looking at the ins and outs of zooming in Lightroom and Photoshop. Welcome to this week's Editing Toolbox video. I'm Craig from Unleashed Education, and in these videos we like to share quick tips, tricks and techniques that we hope will help make your editing life a little bit easier. Today I'm talking about zooming in and out, when and why and how we do that in Lightroom and Photoshop. Let's take a look in Lightroom first. So I have my image here in the develop module. You can see on the left hand side at the top here we have the navigator as well. Next to the navigator you have fit, 100 and 400%. So these are our zoom options here. Fit you can change. That can go either fit or fill. What fill does is it just fills the image display panel up fully. I usually keep this on fit because I want to be able to see the full image. The next one is 100%. Now this is a really important one, and I guess that's probably why you can't change this. 100% is the only zooming that you should be doing when you're checking your images for sharpness. If you're looking beyond 100%, at 150, at 200, at whatever it might be, you are no longer getting an accurate look at what your image sharpness is like. So let's take a look at that in action now. So the next one I have to 400%. So if I click 400%, when I'm zoomed in, I can navigate the image just by clicking and dragging with the mouse. And you'll see here, it's very pixelated and grainy, and I can't fully tell that the eye is sharp. Whereas at 100%, I can look and go, yes, that's sharp, the eye is nice and glossy, there's lots of texture in the fur, all of those things that I need to know that yes, I've hit my focus where I should have. Having said that, zooming in beyond 100% is really useful for when you're doing pixel level edits. So taking collars out, cloning pieces, cleaning up eye boogers, whatever you're doing in your editing where you're using spot healing, cloning, any of those kind of tools where you want to be able to zoom in really close to see the absolute fine detail at that kind of more pixel level. That is when you use those higher zoom percentages. Let's talk shortcuts. So if I press Z on my keyboard, it will zoom in to 100% by default. Press Z again and it will go back to fit or fill if you have fill set there. Now if we use this 400% and you press Z, then the default is going to become the last setting that you used on here. So to get back to 100%, you just click 100 here and you can press Z now and it will zoom in and out to 100%. There are keyboard shortcuts for this as well, so you can hold down Command on a Mac or Control on a PC and press plus, and that's going to zoom in. And you'll note in the third panel here it changes the zoom amount to what we're actually zoomed into, so 50, 66.7, etc. So you can use that. You can press the space bar again to zoom out to fit, and if we're zooming out, the shortcut for that is Command or Control on your PC and minus. So that's the shortcuts and that's the navigation options here. In this third panel you do have the ability to change that, and that's going to show you the increments that you can change it in. So I usually have 400 set just in case I do want to look at any kind of super close details, check for eye boogers, any of those kind of things. One more thing we can do in Lightroom with zooming in on your images is if we come down to the bottom right here and you've got this little triangle downwards facing arrow, click on there and you have a zoom shortcut here. That brings up a zoom bar here, and you can now just use the slider to zoom in and out. I just want to give you one more tip in terms of the actual zooming to 100%. So if we make this image smaller And let's say that you're looking at thumbnails, that you're using a smaller screen on a 13-inch laptop or something like that. You don't see detail as clearly when you're using a smaller screen. So I think when you're checking your images and you're doing your editing, that becomes more crucial that you check at 100% for your sharpness, just because then you know, looking at it full size, if it's sharp or not. Whereas on a smaller screen, even if it's set to fill or fit the screen, you're not seeing as much detail as clearly. So that's a really good tip, especially for working on smaller screens. Even with my studio display here, which is 27 inches, I still always check at 100% for my sharpness on my images before I start work on finishing off any edits or anything. And then I zoom in and go, oh, I've done most of the editing work, but the eyes aren't quite sharp, so I need to go back and find an image that's sharper. Alright, so that's Lightroom. Let's jump over to Photoshop and take a look at your tools in there. Here we are in Photoshop with the same image, and I guess the first thing to talk about is how to tell how far in you've zoomed in Photoshop, which is a little bit different to Lightroom. So you'll see in the image title here in the top panel, we've got the file name and type, and then you've got the @ and then you've got the percentage. So that percentage there is how far zoomed in we are. You'll be very pleased to know that the shortcuts for zooming in and out in Photoshop are the same as Lightroom. So Command or Control and plus zooms in, and you'll see here in the increments we go 50%, 66.7, 100. I'm just using my mouse to scroll around the image here. Or you can hold the space bar here to get your hand tool up and then click and drag around. So that's at 100%. We can go beyond, and again you see as soon as we get to 200 the image quality starts to break down and it's no longer an accurate representation of how sharp our images are. 300 makes it worse, 400, 500, 600, let's come back to the eye here, 700, 800, and 1200. Now once we get all the way zoomed into 1200 and beyond that, you start to see every single pixel individually. So you get these kind of grid of the lines of the pixel from 1200% and up. And I don't usually zoom in this far on images, but on the rare occasions when I do, it's for very, very fine detail work with, you know, hairs or things like that. But obviously zooming in, you know, to 200, 300, 400% is really helpful when you're cloning and seeing any mistakes that you've made. All of those things that you would expect when you're seeing the super fine detail at these close ranges. We're at 200% now. There is one more shortcut that's really handy here, and that is Command or Control and 0. And that takes us back to fit. So that's going to fit the image to the screen as big as it can without you not being able to see the whole image. So those are your shortcuts. There's one other tool that we can use, and that is the zoom tool here. If we have the zoom tool selected, you can just click to zoom in. If you have the minus selected, you can click to zoom out. So those changes are in the top here, plus to zoom in, minus to zoom out. All makes sense. You also have some defaults here as well, where you can go 100%, fit to screen, or fill screen. Let's go back to fit, and that is our shortcuts all done. So just a reminder, because it's so important, and I'm going to repeat myself again, when you're checking for sharpness, you should only go to 100%. If you're doing any other editing work or fine-tuning or close work or detailed work, zooming in beyond that is absolutely fine. So I hope this week's tips have been useful for you. If you've got any questions or comments, you're always welcome to put them in the section down below, and I'm happy to answer. And I will see you again in another editing toolbox very soon.